How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, I know you're really going to enjoy this week's guest on Headcases, and just to give you a little bit about him, he's had 30 years of hair industry experience. I love this fact about him. He had entered NAHA as a student and ended up as a finalist, and that's what really powered him into his passionate pursuit into education. He spent 10 years as an international educator where he established technical academies across North America, Europe, and Asia. He's taught men's grooming. He's been involved in product development, sales, and distribution. Today, he actually oversees the Floyd's 99 education team. In 2024, he will be publishing his first book, The In-Between, co-authored with his hairdressing sister, Melissa. He is the Senior Director of Creative and Technical Education for Floyd's 99 Barbershops. So let's get into this week's head case, Mr. Patrick Butler. Patrick, it is a pleasure to have you on here. And for those of you listening and watching right now, I've known him for years, but I finally met him. We did a beauty cast. It was Beauty Cast, wasn't it? The program we did together. And I just became so enamored with you straight away that I said, this guy has such a great voice and such great insight that I have to get him on our show. So welcome to Headcases.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's a distinct pleasure to join your podcast. I love your podcast. I love the interviews that you've had. And for me personally, I've been able to meet you, but prior to that, I've been able to watch you and watch how you've inspired so many. And it's just, this is a really full circle moment for me just to have this opportunity to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you. That was very kind and very pleasurable. And part of the reason why I do this program, just so people talk nice to me. So listen, like we know of one another, we've done all of that. But what I always like to do is give everybody just a little bit of background on where you came from, why hair, and because I think that's a question that even people at our industry always look at our industry and they go, well, we'll get into it later about the perceptions that we have of it. But the reality is they go, well, why, what got you into hair?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's one that I'm hit with a lot. And I love sharing it, Chris, simply because I backed into hair. And what I mean by that is that after high school, all of my friends were pursuing education through college or trade schools, and I honestly didn't know what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And I also knew that I had to pay for it myself. And so I thought, well, I've got to figure something out. Well, I just started working straight away. And I quickly realized that I needed to do something so that I could earn a better living and make a better life for myself. I just didn't know what it was. Yeah. Well, the good news was I have a very good friend, and she's a fantastic hairdresser. And she finally sat me down after a couple of years and she said, look, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I guess I'm going to enroll in college. That's what everybody does. She goes, well, yeah, but what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. She goes, so you're going to spend money and you're going to pursue college because you think that's the path that you should take because everybody else did it? I said, yeah, I guess that doesn't sound so great, right? And she said, well, let me ask you a question. You like being creative, correct? And I said, yeah. She goes, you like working with people? Yeah. She goes, do you like to be your own boss and guide your own path? And I said, yeah. She goes, I think you should follow me. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, come with me. And we literally drove to a cosmetology school, one of the better schools in my city. And Chris, I wish to this day I knew what they had done because they had done something to me, because by the end of the tour, the end of the conversation, all I recall was sitting down and signing paperwork. And the next thing you know, I'm enrolled. And it brings me to this point where I'm sitting in what you would consider a freshman class, and I look around. And here's the deal. I looked around, and I was outnumbered. There was a room full of young women and myself, and that's fine. But as the instructor started to ask each of us how we got here, why we decided to pursue this career, all these young women had these wonderful stories, such as, oh, I used to do my sister's hair and all my friends' hair, and I used to play with my dolls and do their hair, and this has been a dream of mine my entire life. It gets to me, and suddenly I go, well, my friend said it was a good idea. I mean, just the worst answer possible. And I just remember the side eye that all these fellow students gave me, and I just shrunk in my seat at that moment. But here's how it turned around. As we began that coursework, one of the instructors came to me, and we were learning how to use tools. And I was fumbling. I didn't have that finger work, that dexterity down. And I started to get down on myself. And she said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, I don't know how to do this, and everybody else does." And she looked at me square in the eye, and she said, "Who said they're doing it right?" And
Oh,
I said,
wow.
"Oh, okay." And she said, "Listen, just because they've been doing it a long time in your mind doesn't mean that they learn correctly or they've got the skill to do this the right way. You're great because I can teach you something fresh, and you've got a fresh perspective to absorb that and to do it correctly and build a skill set where I don't have to break down bad habits." And I'll tell you, Chris, it was some of the best information that I could have had at that moment, because it just boosted me up and gave me confidence that I didn't have. And suddenly I said, you know what? I'm going to take everything on now.
Yeah.
I'm going to dive in deep. And so that's really how it began. It began in a really backhanded way where someone really prompted and guided me. And thank goodness they did, because it gave me the opportunity to learn something new. And suddenly it was like that moment you see in movies where it's the epiphany moment, right? Where the light shines, the music plays, and someone goes, "Ah, there it is." And Chris, in that moment, I had that epiphany that this is where I was supposed to be. This is what I was supposed to do. Now it's upon me to take on everything and learn as much as I could. And that's how it started.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I take my hat off to the admissions person that was guiding you through that tour, number one, and secondly, to that teacher. And because I think that's something that gets short-circuited along the way. That we even have songs about beauty school dropout and all those things that affect our industry. But I just wanted to pay some homage to that instructor, because she could have just turned that whole thing around, said, "Yeah, whatever," and left you hanging there. And it might have went. Your career may have went in a different direction. But that one guided moment, that clear, specific instruction that you gave to you of the why, that shifted and changed you. So I always take my hat off to those people, because those are the ones that train all of the new people that are coming into our industry, and I think they get sometimes the short end of the stick. But I just wanted to ask you this, because I find that oftentimes, because I believe in always paying homage to the people that you know, the people that helped you, and the people you learn from. Like I always say, that anything that I've learned from somebody else, I always give them credit, and rather than saying that I came up with it. Who is the person that your friend, who, unless you don't want to say so, but who's that friend, just to give them a shout out?
No, her name is Shelley McPherson, and she just a wonderful friend and someone I admire so much for the work that she has done behind the chair. I mean, just, Chris, there's an era that, and I don't want to date myself and sound like that golden era is gone necessarily, but there was an era where you looked at people behind the chair, hairdressers, hairstylists, and barbers, and the craft that they honed in on and focused on was at such an elevated level. And we continue to aspire to get there. Don't get me wrong. However, there was what I consider a golden age where I looked at those people behind the chair, including herself, and I just said, "That's the bar. That's what I need to get to." And so, for her to take time as a friend and a mentor to push me and guide me to that school meant everything. And then, to your point, those instructors in school, they really, really were the force that pushed me even further. And so I'm grateful for them, and just that the connection they made and the time that they took to be compassionate and help someone who is learning fresh.
Yeah, what I love about doing this podcast is, anybody that does podcasting will tell you that you're certainly doing it just because you love it, because it certainly doesn't pay. But what I love about it is that not only do I get to meet incredible people such as yourself, but I often find this link where there's so much more in common than there is in differences with people in our industry. And you mentioned that your you came from this golden era where you looked up to and you saw these guiding lights in our industry, and our industry was perceived in a different way at that time. And if you're listening as opposed to watching, you can tell by the incredible voice that I have that it probably sounds like I'm 30 years old. And I'm saying that with my tongue in my cheek, and I'm Canadian. That's called sarcasm. But the reality is when I started in the industry, and let's see, I got into it and hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen. 1967 was when and I don't want to hear that you weren't born yet, but when I started in the industry, it was still all roller sets. And that's when our industry had just started to make that shift. Sassoons had come out. There was all that thing, but I was in Saskatchewan, Humboldt, Saskatchewan, central Canada. Just jumped out of my igloo. And but the point is that message hadn't reached rural central Canada yet. And I got into it just because my mom was a hairdresser. But the reality was I was just on the cusp. I was on the cusp, and I saw the transition happening. And I went through that where it was, okay, fine, putting rollers in. I just about lost. I almost got fired from my job because all of my monstrosities that I would build with backcombing always would kind of fade over like a leaning tower when they were walking out. But one of the owners of the building saw something in me, and he said, "This kid doesn't know anything about cutting, but he's a good cutter." And so he moved me over to the other salon where one of the Sear brothers, CYR, he and Len did all the celebrities in town. And this is when I had moved out of Humboldt to Saskatoon, and then he saw the cutting talent in me, and so I got to cut all the hair, and he got to finish them. So the story is I saw that area, and I came up in that era where you just, some of those cutters, like I can remember when Sassoons finally came to America, and I went to a class, and I saw. I just saw the instructors come in, and it was like, oh, and the sky, they would part, and you felt like you had to genuflect in front of them, and I love that era, but I also love how now those people that were there and the new people that are taking the place, like yourself, are not irreverent, and they are kind, and they are willing to help, and they do just, I don't think a person that's out there that's of your caliber that I couldn't go up to as a student said, "Hey, want to thank you. Can you help me for a second?" And that person like yourself would stop and just give them whatever time they needed to help our industry along. So what cultivated that in you? Like what made that? Because I know that I'm even going in my head going out of some of the orders of the things I wanted to talk to. But I when I was on the beauty cast with you and the information and the advice you gave, and you spoke so kindly and so beautifully about it, what was it that shifted your brain?
Tell you the owner of the school, his name was Lyle McKegg.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, Lyle owned the school, but in addition to that, what I didn't realize and I came to realize later was he was heavily involved in the industry. And at that time, as you know, there were many shows throughout the country. We had a completely different system throughout the country with distributorship and individual shows, city by city, state by state. But he ran a team. It was called the Yes Team, and they did big events, whether it was IBS or ABS or Premiere. Yeah. And Lyle ran that team. Well, here's me coming out of Omaha, Nebraska. And the reason I share that is, people tend to overlook the middle of this country and say, Omaha?
Yeah.
You didn't come out of a big city? And at the time, people told me, if you want to do something big in this industry, you better move.
Right.
You better move to LA, New York, Chicago, whatever it may be. And I just couldn't get my head around that. And I started to believe it for a moment until Lyle looked at me and said, why do you think that's what you need to do? And I said, well, I'm really inspired by the things that you do and the team that you have on these stages at these big shows. And if that's what I want to pursue, surely I must move. And he said, well, let's not forget that I am still based here in Omaha,
Right.
and I'm doing those things. And suddenly, Chris, that just meant everything to me, because once again, it bolstered me up and gave me the confidence I needed to go, wait a minute, I can be anywhere and pursue this if I've got the right support and guidance that can help me understand how to get there. And so I think a couple of things to answer your original question. I think that those instructors along the way that continue to instill confidence in me and find ways to do so. And then here's this owner who's running these teams at some of the biggest shows in the country, but still based in Omaha, Nebraska,
Right.
and running a school and taking time to help me with a haircut or a color or a perm on the beauty school floor, suddenly gave me that confidence and made me realize that you can go anywhere and do anything if you really apply yourself. And that really was the inspiration. But without those individuals, without those instructors, without him and his guidance, I don't know that I would have got there right away.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I see that. And when we're always around people that, are on the way up or at closer to the top. And please understand, for everybody listening and watching right now, that when Patrick and I talk about people at the top, we're only saying about our top, not of anybody else's, because I think there's a hill you have to climb in the industry, but there's even a bigger hill you have to climb within yourself, and that comes with that confidence you talk about, etc. And it reminds me of, I had a young kid that worked for me, and this is, we were in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and Jeff was this great kid that worked for us, and he said, "I'm going to LA," and I went, "Oh, going to LA? Okay, good, sure." He says, "Well, yeah, I've had a great offer there," and I said, "So it sounds like." He said, "Sounds like the grasses sounds a little bit greener there for you." And he said, "Yeah." And I'm, by the way, I'm relating this story that I never knew I said, but he told me about this years later. And I won't put in the adjective that I put into it, but I will say it without the expletive. But I said, maybe you need to water your own lawn. And he said that stuck with him. And I hear that in the conversation that we're having. Everybody always thinks that there's something out there it's the location that's going to help you. So everybody that's watching and listening, just, listen to your heart when it comes to stuff. Everything that you have is within you, and it's not necessarily going to be in the location. It's always going to come from the people that are around you. And that's what I heard you saying.
I firmly believe that. And thankfully, I had that information given to me and that advice given and drilled into me, because that changed the game for me. And it allowed me to free my mind up and continue to absorb what was around me, and then focus that energy into doing the best I could right where I was at.
Yeah.
And in turn, that helped me get even further, because then I could build my life behind the chair and then pursue things on the outside as well. And I'll tell you, without that boost and that belief and realizing that I could do that anywhere, I don't think that I would have gotten there. I really don't.
Yeah.
And so I'm thankful. I'm grateful for that advice.
Yeah. And you don't have to always, people don't have to come off as a know-it-all. It's just the confidence that it gives you. That's what endeared me to you when we shared that time on Beautycast, was that I went here. And when I think ego gets a bad tag, because I think everybody, you have to have an ego, but an ego isn't always bad. Ego just means, here's the person that I am right now, that I need to be when I'm in this environment, such as a stage. But you can still be yourself. And that's where I think, so I wanted to just jump into this, because I think that everybody that thinks of NAHA, that they think of, well, you have to have this upper self, that you're willing to put yourself on the line, because it does take a thicker skin to be able to say, I'm going to do some work and I'm going to have some of the people in the industry check it out and then grade you whether you're going to be the winner or not. So, but all of that aside, tell me what that experience was like, because even, I think it wasn't in school, your instructor got you to enter NAHA, and you actually became up as one of the finalists. And I think that's amazing. Tell us about that experience.
Yes, that was the owner, Lyle, again. And NAHA was coming up and building itself up in the industry. And he said, hey, I know you want to continue to pursue things. Here's an opportunity. I said, well, what does it take? I have no idea. And he said, well, it's going to take some photo work. Well, I looked at him. I said, well, I have no clue where to start there. And he said, well, that's where I come in. And here's the blessing in this whole conversation. He truly set it up. He said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share with you what I've come to know and learn over the years about photo work, but you're going to have to do the work.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be the one that does this. I'm just going to facilitate. Thankfully, he set up the shoot, but at that time we had to produce 5 models and 5 different distinct looks. And it was fantastic, Chris. It pushed me to my limits, helped me understand a lot about makeup and just lighting and just getting into my first photo shoot. Well, lo and behold, we were really fortunate. We ended up making the finals, and there were 3 finalists in each category. And thankfully, I made that, and I ended up going to New Orleans. That's where it was held that year. And you have to understand, I was starstruck simply because at that time, again, I'm dating myself, but at the time, I only read magazines. I read Modern Salon, American Salon, those type of magazines. And that's where I saw all these well-known hairstylists, barbers, hairdressers doing this fantastic work, photo work, stage work, writing these articles that inspired me. And now here they were right in front of me in this grand ballroom in New Orleans. And I'll tell you, I was starstruck, but by the same token, and I've told this story before, I said, I need to get something out of this. I need to, yes, I want to win. Luckily, my classmate, we made 2 of the 3 finals. My classmate won. It was fantastic. But here I was able to go up and talk to someone. I've told this story before, but I walked up to Irvine Rusk. And at the time, he really inspired me. He did some great photo work. He was building his shears out, what is this, alpha, beta, gamma shears,
yep.
and all that. And I walked up to him and I introduced myself. I said, Mr. Rusk, I just want to take a moment to introduce myself and tell you who I am. My name is Patrick, and I've made the finals here. It's just an honor to meet you. I've looked up to you and your work. I just really want to tell you how much it's inspired me. By the way, do you have any advice for me as I begin my career? Because I was just ready to get out and begin my career. And he said, absolutely. He said, congratulations on making it here. He said, well, here's my advice. Take a look at the room. And I said, yeah, for sure. It's amazing. He said, well, what do you see? And I said, well, I see all these people who've inspired me. They're in the magazines and they're doing stage work. This is amazing. He said, well, I'll tell you what you see. It's a load of shit. And I said, excuse me? And he said, my advice to you is to not get taken with that. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, listen, here's my advice to you. Do good work. Do good work over and over again. Fail at it, get better at it, and continue to do it over and over again until you master it. And if you need help, ask for it. But then get back in there and do it over and over again. That's my advice.
Yeah.
He shook my hand, turned, and walked away. And
that was typical Irving fashion, you know. And for those of you, and that was other part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, is so people got to know our heritage. And Irvine Rusk, you know, and Irvine and Rita Rusk, and then Irvine and Louise, they really helped to change our industry at the time. And they had a successful product line. But the reason why I'm saying this is he was one of my hair heroes as well. And I have to say that it's really interesting because, and I don't know if it was being a typical Scot or it was the fact of just his nature, but he didn't mince words, and cussing was part of the vernacular, and it was everyday stuff. So it was always was always colorful, it was always educational, but it was always brutally honest, and that's what I loved about that man, is that he just told it like it is. So you know, that's where kind of it brought you to. Now, I want to just jump into, because right now, I mean, probably one of the hottest barber styling, grooming companies is what you're with, and especially being their creative and technical director, that takes a lot. But before you got there, tell us a little bit about it. What was the hook that got you into education, number one, and then where did that lead you?
After I got out of school,
Well, I got out.
after I did my
My
time,
time.
my bid was up. No, I got out of school, and as I did, American Crew had just launched in the industry. And so they had launched their initial product line, and then they started to do a tour of the country. And as I mentioned earlier, at that time, distribution was far different. We have the two 800-pound gorillas in the industry now that distribute everything. But at the time, every state had a different distributor, and multiple ones at that. And so American Crew launched and started hitting the industry. Well, I had the opportunity to go attend one of their shows, and they came through town, and they did a stage show. And I remember sitting in the audience. I watched on stage as there were multiple educators, but here's the catch. There were barbers on stage, there were cosmetologists on stage, but the language that they spoke to the audience was a common language.
Right.
There was no division.
Yeah.
It was about hair cutting. It was about grooming. It was about how you interact with the client to recommend that product and why. And I couldn't believe it because as I sat there, I realized one thing, Chris. I said, first of all, this is the first group that's inspired me in that way. And I realized this, I need to pursue this. This is what I want to do. Because what I was really taken by was the fact that they washed away those titles and that division. And instead, they spoke to the group as one and said, this is how we can do it. This is how you can do this. And, as you know, at that time in the industry, there was no one else speaking to the men's market the way they did. They broke heavy ground at that time. Well, I was very fortunate. I pursued them, and I applied, and I made it onto a regional team. And I started to learn the ins and outs of speaking to their product line, speaking to grooming skills and traits, and then learning how to just speak in general, learn how to educate to a group or an individual. Well, over time, it grew. I was very fortunate to advance with that team. And I ended up making they called it the All-Star team. Their international All-Star team is about a dozen of us. And we just started touring, and we did all the shows. Spring and fall, we did every show across every state. And then later, American Crew opened an academy in Boulder, Colorado. And so it was interesting because at the time, as I continued to grow my skills, it was almost as if you had to choose. Do you want to go into the academy work, or do you want to do stage work?
Right.
And some of my teammates at the time said, well, you should stick with the stage work. I mean, this is where we have a ton of fun. And, this is where you can really make an impact. And I said, well, I actually like both. Is there anything preventing me from doing both? And the company said, no, absolutely not. We want you to do the stage work, and we want you to help with the academy. I dove into the academy, Chris, and what I really took away from that is something that sticks with me today. The power that you have to help someone grow their skill set in the moment that they can apply that day or the next day if necessary, that can help them build their career. And I love that. I love seeing the impact that we could have as educators to help someone grow. And again, it broke down division between barbers and cosmetologists. This was just about pure cutting, pure grooming, and helping you. That's how it started. And I was very fortunate to stay with them for 10 years. And in that time period, they allowed me to travel the world and teach in multiple countries and open more academies and do a ton of stage work. And in the process, what that did for me was it helped me develop my skill set, build my confidence, and in turn, I could push that back and bring it forward for others. And I'm so grateful. That opportunity changed my career.
Yeah, we are more akin than different, and I said that before. You said something in there that I just loved, and I want to equate it to a thing that most people say, because I heard it when you teach somebody something, and you always hear this one: the light bulb went off in their head. And I want to take that a little deeper, because I think that the more we talk about the light bulb, the more they think it's a magical moment where you turn the switch, and you turn the switch, but the light bulb's called understand. And I think that when you can take someone who goes from memorization to truly understanding, that's the difference. And that's the difference between education and I'm not going to say inspiration, and maybe that is right, because there's a lot of work that's out there that inspires me. A lot of people that I was inspired by are like Trevor and Irvine and Anthony Muscolo and the like, all that, like, for the avant-garde work, it was like Robert Lebeda and so on, that they truly inspired me. But I never had any. They didn't really teach me. They inspired me because they weren't around me. But Patrick, I see it and I even know it just in talking to you, that when you're teaching someone in the academy or on stage, it's about how do you take somebody and transform them from where they were before, when they were memorizing stuff, where they can actually understand it and apply it to everywhere else. What was it that was that, again? I'm going to use the light switch or whatever. What was the thing that helped you to turn that around so that you could actually transform those people?
I think it's a couple pieces of advice that were given to me, because I do not believe that I have this amazing God-given talent that led me to this place right here. I do not believe that. Don't get me wrong. I truly admire those individuals who have that creative spark that truly comes out and can elevate their game. Fantastic. That's wonderful. I think for the majority of us, though, we have to learn these skills and understand how to hone our craft. And the advice that helped me get there came from one of my mentors along the way, especially at American Crew, because I had that self-doubt, right? I don't know if I belong here. It was the imposter syndrome.
Right.
And they said, listen, the quote they gave me was, knowing how to do something makes you capable. I said, sure. And they said, knowing why you do something makes you a professional. And that why is where we need to focus and hone our energy. Because if you can transfer the why to someone else and help them understand the why behind their action, you are truly going to open them up. And I said, well, again, I don't know if I have that talent. And they said, listen, as an educator, bringing out the best in others is a skill that just takes about 10% natural inclination. The other 90% has to be deliberate. And that helped me so much, because suddenly it gave me the confidence to, again, push forward, because I knew when they said that my deliberate actions, learning that skill, honing that craft, being very deliberate in my actions so I could master it and then push it forward and transfer that to someone else, I knew I could help someone in that moment. And so those two pieces of advice helped me tremendously, because then it empowered me to, again, focus on my craft, master it, and then transfer that to others. And I truly feel indebted to those individuals who took the time to help me understand that. And I feel it's inherent upon myself right now, as I continue in my career, to push that forward to others, because I don't feel like I had that natural ability that just was going to help me glide through life and glide through the industry with ease. I had to work hard and I had to hone those skills. And now I feel like I want to help others understand that they have that capability as well. And that's what's propelled me forward every step of the way.
Yeah. I keep listening to you and say, we can be friends. We can be friends, because everything you're saying, I'm going, me too. I'm sure the people listening are going, yeah. I want to jump back to what you were saying just about the natural ability. I mean, I don't think anybody's people. I might get hate mail for this one. I don't think anybody is born with an ability. But because let's face it, we all know Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps might have somewhere along the line said, you know what, why don't I jump in the pool? But he wasn't an Olympiad because he just jumped in the pool and became he had to train. He had to push himself. He had to go through hardships. He had to give up on other things so that he could be master of something. And I see that's what happens in our industry. So what I really want people that are listening and watching to get is that, whatever we do, you can do too. It's like I always say, Mary Baran's boy, Chris, if he can do it, God help me, anybody can do it. All it does is just, like I always say, and I've said it 1,000 times, fail your way to the top. Don't be afraid of failure. Just keep cooking. But I love what you said about knowing makes you capable, understanding makes you a professional? Because that means, and give me a little more about what that means to you, because I got my take on it, but what does that, when he says, makes you a professional? And I think there's a couple of things words that get bandied around in our industry, and it's professionalism. And not that I don't believe in the word, I do, but it certainly requires qualifying. When you say knowing makes you capable, but understanding makes you professional, give us a little more on that.
Well, it's interesting when we teach classes, and I've had that opportunity where I've been working with people and they say, gosh, this is great. These are great skills to focus on. Hey, can you help me understand how to do this trend? Okay. That's great. Show me the photograph. Show me what you're inspired by right now. And they said, well, how do you do that? I want to learn how to do that. And I think I frustrate them because I come back and I said, well, then we need to focus on exactly what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. We need to master our skills, the foundational skills that you need to understand. Because if you understand cause and effect, you can understand how to adapt to anything that comes down the line, anyone who sits in your chair. And it's funny because it takes people a moment to understand where I'm going with that sometimes. But the truth is, I fully believe it, knowing the why, the cause and effect. If I do this, this will occur. How do I adapt that to this situation now? And I love that. I love when we can break through in those moments, because now I know you can take it to the next level. And that's what I mean by professionalism. Because in turn, what I've always encouraged people to do is you need to share your knowledge, not just with other fellow hairdressers or barbers. You need to share your knowledge with your clientele as well. Because the more that they can see that you are mastering your craft and understanding why you're choosing to do something, the more confidence they have in your ability, and they believe in you, and they're going to want to come back more and more.
Yeah, I love that. And it just made this click in my head when you were talking there, that we've moved. I've watched our industry, and I'm not saying all of them have done it, but we went from kind of departmentalization, and even some of the bigger salons that we have, especially after COVID and so on, they started to go through, they departmentalized and went to, where everybody did everything. And I think that, at least my opinion, not that it's bad, just that it got us stuck where people before that weren't afraid of short hair. They weren't afraid of cutting hair. Somebody came in and talked about having a haircut or saying, I want an appointment because I want to take all my hair off. People would scatter. And people like you and I would go, put me in, coach. I want to be there. Because to me, and I've always said this, and this is something I really truly believe in, long hair or short hair does not make you beautiful. Every person is beautiful, and it's how your inside deals with your outside that makes you more or less beautiful. And a part of it is the confidence. And what I love, to me, when I see a woman that has the confidence to, say, cut their hair short, be their own self. And to me, that's true beauty. But I think that right now, where our industry is going to shift, because let's face it, we're at the tipping point. Long hair has been going on for so long. Coloring long hair has been going on for so long, and there's about to be a huge shift in our industry. This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. What do you say to people, or what do you think is going to take our industry from that tipping? What do you think is going to happen in that, when that tipping point happens, all of a sudden the clients, everybody starts coming in and wanting their hair shorter?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, we've talked about trends and how they come and go, but I think as you said something that really stuck with me, it's helping someone understand that they are capable of pulling this off and looking this way, and that
Mm-hmm.
inner beauty is going to shine even more as we help enhance that from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel I've always felt this way, that it's our responsibility behind the chair to help someone see what they can't see in themselves sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't solve it all. You know, we talk, well, the joke is always about us being psychiatrists just as much as we do hair. But the truth is, I think there are some simple ways that we can instill that confidence in others and help bringing that out. And to answer your question, I think the tipping point, quite honestly, is how we take it upon ourselves behind the chair, regardless of your title, um, to put ourselves in that moment with that client and really help bring that out of them and show them the capability and opportunity that they have to enhance their look. And I know that sounds like a very broad answer, and it may not seem to be getting very specific, but if I dig under there a little bit more, what I'm saying is I continue to see a lack of connection, and it's a missing skill in our industry
Yes.
where it's that interpersonal interaction and developing the connection. And I'll tell you real quickly, we did a study on it. We hired an outside group to do a study on this. And the industry, not just us, but the industry average of first time clients who come back for a second visit is only at 30%.
Wow.
30% of your clients are coming back after the first visit. Well, here's where the information really hit home, that we hired the company to figure out why. So they called these people up, they connected with them, and they said, "Hey, what happened? Did you have a great experience?" "Yeah, it was fine." "Was someone rude to you?" "No." "Oh, well, why aren't you coming back for that second visit?" "I just didn't feel like I had a connection with that stylist or barber.
Mm,
I don't know that they truly saw what I wanted, so I'm going to try someone else." And so the mindset was, I'm going to shop until I find someone because I don't feel
mm.
like connected. And suddenly I bring that up because suddenly that really brought to the surface the fact that we all depend on that connection. We want to relate to someone, we want to connect with someone, and we want their confidence to shine so we can feel great about what they're trying to recommend to us. And I think that's the tipping point, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
is how we can all start to work together to bring that out, to make the connection, because then it just opens up the opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's sitting right there, this is going to sound. I'm going to try to get this question out in a quasi-intelligent manner. But what I heard what you say is shopping, and I think now, like when you and I started out in the industry, there was no internet, so people often came back just because there was no billboard anywhere of telling you anywhere else, and it was like a shot in the dark. Everybody sees everybody's social right now and what they can do. It doesn't mean they're going to get any better service or find a connection, but they know people that they can try out, same as they did with us if we were the ones that let them go. But what I find right now is they have that availability. Our customers are moving around more, at least have the availability to move around more. But the reality is how do we get them to stick? And I think that's part of what you were talking. What advice would you give to people to make them stick? How do you really make them stick and say, I want to be with you, and etc.?
I say this a lot to a lot of our younger team members, and I said, listen, with your actions behind the chair, okay, I want you to go with me on this. And I tell them all the time, 100% is easy, 90% is hard. And they stare at me. They go, what do you mean by that? And I said, if you are consistent with how you interact with your client, how you guide them, how you recommend products, how you recommend change, whatever you're doing, if you're 100% and deliberate with your actions over and over again, it's easy because you've mastered that. You've made that your own, and you're intentional with your questioning and your actions. 90% is hard. And they're like, well, 90% is close to 100. I said, yeah, but it's not 100%. And here's why. 90% means you're picking and choosing what you think you're going to share with that client. And suddenly you're holding back what you can offer them, and you're not as deliberate in your actions. You think you can cherry pick your way through. The most successful people behind the chair that I've ever seen are 100% with their actions and they're deliberate with how they speak to their clients and what they offer and the confidence that they show when they do so. And I tell people all the time, if you're going to make this change, if you're going to be successful, I highly recommend putting 100% in, because it's going to be far easier than giving 90% and picking and choosing when you put it on with that client.
Yeah.
And suddenly it starts to flip for them and they go, okay. And I'm like, let's take one thing at a time though. Okay. What are you going to do 100% of the time? And then pick up from there and build on that. And that's helped me. It's helped others quite a bit. But I really think that that's the first step a lot of people need to understand is, how do I commit 100% to this?
Yeah.
And sometimes we think we are, but we're not.
Yeah. And 100% might mean, in my thinking, is that if I'm not 100% at it, where do I need to go to get my education that takes me to that 100%, or takes me at least my skill? Because I think you're talking of a couple things. You're talking about the soft sale, the soft goods that it takes to help to talk, convince, consult with someone, but then you have to have the hard skills to match. And can you speak to us a little bit about that? How would you advise somebody if their hard skills aren't quite there? And I want to be even more specific. Right now, let's just talk about that. I know that I can do balayage like a king and a queen. I can cut length and layers in the hair. I can handle curling irons, blow dryers, and all of that. But in deep down, it's not that I don't like cutting short hair. I'm terrified because I don't know how to cut short hair. So what would you say to that person that could help them push them over the line that they need to learn?
Absolutely. I focus a lot on short hair, and obviously the business that I work in at Floyd's, we focus on that. It's a huge part of our business, but I'll tell you, if I go back in my career and look, I didn't start there. As a matter of fact, I was inspired by a company that focused on it, and I wanted to pursue them. And in the back of my mind, I go, oh my gosh, what am I getting into? I don't have these skills. I didn't develop these skills in school. It didn't stop me, and I had to start somewhere. And what I'd recommend to anybody is this. It's going to start with that first step is the key here. And the good news for all of us here is, yes, you can have access to education anywhere by means of holding that phone in your hand or the iPad or computer that you use and watch any videos. But that practical work is invaluable. And so I've had people say, well, where do I begin? And I said, well, you begin in a very simple place. I go, who do you know that you can start with, right? And I said, let's start slow. Quit looking at videos that are jumping all the way to the top of the mountain in one fell swoop. I go, you instantly want to do a skin fade because you saw a video, when you should be focusing on a low taper and understanding the impact of what that clipper can do within an inch of the neckline. If I can start you out there and build confidence in lower taper work and fading work, you can move your way up to a mid fade, to a high fade, and suddenly you'll advance yourself to a skin fade. But don't try to do postgraduate work before you graduated from high school.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, I loved, and I want to bring up something right now because I've heard you talk before about, a learning curve and a forgetting curve. Give us a little bit more about what do you mean by that?
Oh my goodness, this made a big impact on me. As an educator, I feel this responsibility to give everything to the class or individual that I'm working with.
Right.
And suddenly I want to just pour out all my knowledge, and I feel a responsibility to give you everything I can. What I didn't understand as an educator was there's only so much that person can absorb and take away. And if I teach a 1 hour class, 2 hour class, or 3 hour class, I'm pouring more into that moment and expecting them to retain all that. The truth is, what I learned about education and in anyone taking a class, including ourselves, is we only have the ability to absorb and walk away from the classroom with so much information.
Right.
And quite frankly, it's only about 20% of what we sat through.
Yeah.
And so when I think about the forgetting curve, it means the second I walk out of the door of a class, I'm losing information. It's falling out of my head, literally.
Yeah.
It's falling away. And I could have takeaways, pamphlets, papers, notes that I've made, and they can help me to a certain extent, depending on how much I apply it. But the truth is, I'm only walking away with about 20% of what you've shared with me. Or if I'm an educator, how can I flip the script and go, what is the most important thing that I need to share with this person right now, knowing that that's what they need to walk away with? And that ability to edit the information helped me as an educator get more focused on what I need to deliver. As an attendee, if I'm taking a class, I always challenge everyone, what is the one thing that you're going to take away from this class and be able to apply today or tomorrow? Because you cannot get further than that.
Yeah.
If you do, you'll forget and you'll lose the confidence to do so. And so the forgetting curve is impactful to me in two different ways. I think about as an educator, what my responsibility is to be focused. As an attendee, what do I need to do to focus on one thing? Let's make it simple here. What can I do to improve today? And it starts with one thing. And that's really, really been helpful to me.
Yeah, I loved what you said there because, again, you're making light bulbs go off in my head because I keep thinking about the times when I went to education and I watched people do something and I said, that's really cool. But I didn't do it within 24 hours. And then then what a couple of things happened to me. Number one is I lost confidence in doing it, like you said, but it affected the way that I would go to other classes because I say, well, I went something there and I would blame them saying, well, they taught it, but I can't do it. But the reality is the only way that you get from to success and learning something is by actually doing it yourself within that 24-hour period. And that's why I think that while I look at Instagram and TikTok, and I'm always looking for ideas for inspiration. But if I can't get that, instead of that 1 minute video, I think I was listening to something that you did with our other good friend Gordon Miller, and he was saying, I love this, and he said, listen, would you go to a class that was only and pay money to go to a class that was only 1 minute long? And not have a chance to ask any questions, etc. That's the difference between the stuff that we do. When you go to a class, when you're truly learning, you be invested in it. You're actually doing it. You have your hands in there, down and dirty, and you've got to remember you're probably only going to get it to 60% of success. But that's what you have to do anytime. If you can get to 60% of success on the first go round, you're golden because then you'll master it.
Absolutely. I love that. And Gordon's exactly right. You and I wouldn't pay for that. I mean,
No.
That conversation was interesting because you and I know this to be true. You and I have watched many videos and early on the instructional videos that we had access to, we're talking about videos that were 35, 40, 50, an hour long, where we saw every step of a haircut, every step of a color process.
Mistakes and
we
all.
absorbed it. We took it all.
Yeah.
We loved it. And now there's a challenge to go, well, how can I deliver that in 30 seconds?
Yeah.
So
that swipe left, swipe right mentality really does. I think it robs our education right now. And again, don't get me wrong. For people, I'm not poo-pooing it. I use it, Patrick. I know you do. It's there for inspiration to help to push you or solve a quick problem. When there's other people that out there that do a 1 minute video of just one little technique. So you get the technique. You don't watch it all the way through, but I understand what overdirection is. I understand what elevation is and so on. Those are what I still think are amazing. Like I we have mutual friends like with Matt Sweeney, and that's what I love with he and DJ and Muldoon and those people do is they'll give you one technique and just show you that one little principle that makes you better. You still got to go out and do it.
That's right.
And that's why I think that there is going to be a huge movement back to, I think Gordon calls it long education, where you have to sit in an environment and get something back from it. You want to be invested. You're going to make a mistake. People are going to help to correct. And that's the way you get better at what you do. And I'm really looking forward to that in our industry.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
We've talked a lot about that, but we've talked about that. I want to talk just for a second about Floyd's, because that, to me, I think they're one of the bigger mover and shakers that there are in our industry right now. Tell me what that's like. Give me a little bit of vibe of the culture.
Well, Floyd's is interesting because they've been in the industry for 23 years, and we've been able to grow quickly in that time period where we've kind of expanded our footprint across the U.S. But in doing so, it's been interesting to watch because as I tell people who I'm involved with and the work that I do, excuse me, the first thing that they say, usually in response, if they haven't heard of Floyd's, is, Floyd's is a barbershop. And I said, well, you're right. It's on our signage. It's on our door. But once you walk inside that door, I think you're going to be very surprised at what you see and experience. And here's why. Our locations definitely do not look like a traditional barbershop and or salon. We've always had a really heavy music influence. And so we've got these giant poster walls with all these artists on it. And we deliberately play a variety of music very loudly just to have fun. And it changes genres. But when you dig a little deeper, let's get to the heart of what we do. That's most important here. We're not just a barbershop. As a matter of fact, we employ far more cosmetologists than we do barbers. We've got 70% barbers versus 70% cosmetologists versus 30% barbers. And it's just the way the industry is kind of stacked numbers wise. But our range of services is what catches people off guard. We've got a full color bar on the back bar, waxing services as well. We've got a range of take home on the front end. In other words, we can service anyone, male, female, child, it doesn't matter. And so really when you look at it and back out of the picture, you go, wait a minute, that's not just a barbershop, it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid of what a barbershop and a salon should be and could be today, now. And we feel that it's been very relevant to the changing climate in our industry, as well as our society, where people are looking for something a little bit different. And in doing so, they're finding that, hey, this location can really help me bring out what I want to, but do it in a different way.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of fun. We really focus on inclusivity with our staff. We don't have, it's funny, we don't have a strict dress code in the sense that we're not telling you have to wear all black or all white. We want people to feel the best version of themselves because we feel that if they do, they're going to do the best work possible.
Yeah.
So they really get into the fashion they wear, the hair that they have, the tattoos that they have. It doesn't matter. We focus on letting them be themselves so they can do their best work. And in turn, our clients love that.
Yeah.
And so we've had great success with that. And it's just a really fun environment that we've adapted to different cities and markets we're in. And in doing so, we've kind of taken a neighborhood barbershop feel and elevated that.
Yeah.
And in turn, it's really helped us grow quickly.
Yeah, because I think everybody's seen it in our industries how the barbershop and I'm going to take you back like into the 70s. Barbering actually took a bit of a dive because that hairdressers went unisex, as was called at the time. And for those of you listening, I'm actually using air quotes there. They went unisex and it robbed a lot of it. But then kind of we lost that barbering skill. And then when barbering came back, the barbers, I'll tell you, when I was watching, if I would have started then, I would go, I want to be a barber because they have way more fun doing short hair than the hairstylist did. So that was that huge shift that happened. And I just went, it was so much fun because it was so exciting and so extreme in what they would do. So, and I think that really helped us along. So I want to just, Patrick, what pushes you? What pushes you as a human being, as a hairdresser, as somebody who wants to advance in their career? Because the reason why I'm asking that is so that people young kids that are listening that out there right now for them to understand that it is possible. It is possible that you can get anything you want.
It is true. And I'll tell you, if I stop right now and answer that question, the first thing that I'd have to say is that I could not be more grateful for what this industry has done to my life. But I will also, in the same breath, tell you that it wouldn't have been possible without the mentorship and coaching that I received along the way. And I can't encourage anyone enough to seek out mentorship and coaching, because it's going to come in different forms. It's going to come at different stages of your life, different stages of your career, and it may come from unsuspecting places. But if you lean into that, it's going to allow you the opportunity to grow. And I'll tell you, I am a case study in someone who didn't believe that they had that natural ability, that came from the middle of the country, a smaller city, and has been able to experience so much in this industry. And it wasn't because it was handed to me. It wasn't because I had this innate ability to just turn it on and shine. I put in a lot of hard work, but by the same token, that hard work allowed me to pursue other opportunities, whether it was in education, doing stage work, photo or video work, being able to write articles. It doesn't matter. All of that built on itself, but it wouldn't have been possible without that mentorship, because truthfully, and I've said this before in other conversations, I started out my career and I didn't have that immediately. I almost failed and I almost got out of this industry. The very first year, I would have been classified as failing. And my good friend who got me in the industry sat me down, set me straight, and said, you better start asking questions and seeking guidance from everyone around you, because they're doing it, aren't they? And I said, yes. And she said, start asking questions now and adapting and figuring out how to make one thing your own at a time.
Yeah.
And in doing so, that helped me master that skill and grow. And I would tell anybody now, you can do this. And I'll tell you why. Again, I'm going to go back to what my success was born out of a lot of hard work, and also born out of me seeking out guidance from others around me, but then not shutting down and opening myself up and allowing myself to take in what the advice they gave me. Because I'll tell you, the one thing that I see people do that really, really deflates me is when they shut down and think that they know everything they need to know right now. And it doesn't matter what any stage of your career, you can absorb more and you can grow. And so I'm just so thankful, Chris, for the opportunities I've had, because without them and without that mentorship, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I still have room to grow.
Yeah.
And to answer your first question, I still have a lot of room to grow, and I can't wait to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a line that Trevor Sorby once said. He said, I'm more interested in what I don't know than what I do know. And I thought, therein lies the rub.
Absolutely. He is so good.
Yeah.
He is so good.
Okay, we've hit the time where I want to go rapid fire. Just first things that come to your brain, one word, one quick sentence. What turns you on in the creative process?
What turns me on in the creative process, just being able to see that I can push beyond.
Nice. What stifles the creative process for you?
When I stop opening up, I literally, and I know this is more than one word answer, and I'll be quick about it, but when I find myself getting into a plateau, a rut, and I just put it on cruise control, that's what stifles me. Nice. And I have to shake myself.
Love it. A thing in life that you dislike the most?
Dislike the most. I'm in a lot of meetings, Chris. I'm in a lot of meetings, and it's behind the scenes, but I'm a creative and I want to keep moving.
Yeah. Well, I think you answered it right there. What do you love the most in life?
Creating.
Yeah, there you go. What was the most difficult time in your life?
Most difficult time was when I thought I failed. Initially in this industry, I put all my eggs in one basket and I thought I failed. And until I had that guidance to get me out, I literally hit one of the lowest points I've ever hit.
Wow. And thank God you got to the other side. The thing that you dislike most about our industry?
Well, I'm going to just go straight forward on this one. The thing that I dislike about our industry right now is it's exciting that we've used technology to advance and expose different parts of our industry. But by the same token, I don't like that we have limited the opportunity for a lot of interaction from classwork. I just think it's a missing element that unfortunately a lot of hairdressers and barbers really could benefit from.
Yeah. And what do you like most about our industry?
Oh, that is limitless. We continue to reinvent ourselves and to build on the foundations that have been laid for us, and we cannot be stopped. It is fantastic.
Love it. Proudest moment of your life?
My children.
Living person that you admire the most?
Living person that I admire the most, my sister.
Person that you wish you could meet, living or dead?
Oh, goodness. I would love to sit down with Mick Jagger.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you've got a few years left on that one. The month off, where would you go? What would you do?
Month off where I'd go, I would probably head somewhere warmer. I'm in a colder climate, so I would take a January and I would head to a warmer climate and just let it go.
I love it. Something that people don't know about you.
I'm a huge auto racing fan.
Oh, wow.
And huge. And so people never get that one. They're like, oh, here's the hair guy who's into car racing. What? Just a huge fan.
Your greatest fear?
My greatest fear, honestly, not being able to see my children grow and see the heights that they're going to reach. I want to be able to see that.
Beautiful. Favorite curse word?
Fuck.
Favorite comfort food?
A burger and fries.
If you could change one thing about yourself, what would you do? What would it be?
Oh, goodness. I would slow myself down.
Your most treasured possession?
My most treasured possession is the teddy bear that I received before I was 1 year old, and I've still got it to this day.
Awesome. Something in the industry that you haven't done but you'd want to?
Oh gosh, I'm in such great admiration of the people who are doing this work right now with extensions and hair wefts. I think they're doing tremendous work and it's changed things. I wish I knew more about it. I've studied some of it and got my hands in, but I would like to get more into that.
Love it. Now I'll tell you. I'm going to ask you what if you could have a do-over. What would it be? But I'm not going to take that. I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't be who I am today. But if you could change one thing, just one thing, what would it be?
Oh, I would have got into this industry far sooner.
Tomorrow, you couldn't do hair, couldn't be involved with it at all. What would it be? What would you do?
Teacher, educator.
Love it.
I'd go into a classroom.
And then if you had one wish for our industry, what would it be?
My one wish for our industry would be to continue to break through. I mean, we've unfortunately we've created a lot of division, and only in the sense that we've pushed a lot of people out onto their own without a lot of guidance and mentorship. I wish we could rein some of that in.
Love it. Patrick, first of all, if people want to get in touch with you, want to know more from you, how can they? What can they do? How would they get a hold of you?
One of the easiest ways is to use Instagram and just DM me. It's PB Educator. And that's the fastest way.
Love it.
PB Educator.
Gotcha. Yeah. My friend, like I said, I'm calling you friend because that's what I really value as right now, not only as a fellow human being, but we have so much kinship in where our backgrounds came from and what we do. I really feel a real close connection, even though we haven't had that. And I want to have that happen where we can meet one another, give each other a hug, have a beer, and sit down and talk more like this. So I can't thank you enough for being on the program and giving up your time.
Well, first of all, we are going to make that happen, and I look forward to that time. And Chris, I can't thank you enough. You're someone I've looked up to for a long time, and just having this conversation means everything. Thank you.
Pleasure. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers to you.